We're almost halfway through the year, and a lot of people are running on empty without fully realizing it. Grow Therapy helps you find care that's covered by insurance before burnout becomes the baseline. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits you, not the other way around. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Grow accepts over 100 insurance plans, including Medicaid in some states. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. Tommy, what do we got?
Yes. Well, today we're going to take a look at, I don't know, a lot of energy today, right? Today we're going to take a look at some of the lost burial sites in history, some of these historical figures that you definitely have heard these people, but we don't really know where their burial sites are anymore. Some of that was by design. Some of it is kind of lost to history, so we're going to explore that a little bit.
Yep. And I didn't realize a lot of these, like, as you mentioned, we know a lot of these people. I did not really realize that we don't know what happened to them after their death. Like some of these people, I was like, really? I wouldn't have thought that it was a big mystery where they were buried or where their remains.
When you think about it, I mean, if some of these people are so famous,
right?
history-wise,
there'd be like a shrine or something.
There'd be shrine. Well, there probably are there's museums that have this stuff of them, but at their actual burial site, you don't know. It's not like you can go to Philadelphia and there's Ben Franklin's right there, like in the middle of the city.
Oh, I've been there. That was actually pretty cool.
Like, yeah, it's been there too. But like, it's one of those, and you can actually go to D.C. and you have Lincoln, Washington, all those. But like, these are some other non-American ones. So there's a few Americans, I guess we'll touch on the list, right? Yeah. But ones that are out there that just they don't know.
Right. Have you ever been to Ulysses S. Grant's tomb in New York City?
Yes. I remember like a class trip once we
right.
There.
So like I went with a couple of my colleagues and friends, all history teachers. We had like a day off of school for some reason. So we're like, let's just go see the tomb. That's what history teachers do. And when we got there, the actual park ranger was so excited that someone came to see it.
I think I know you're telling me this,
yeah, he was like sleeping in his booth. We like walked in and he was like, hello. He got like super excited. It was one of those like we made his day because I guess people don't visit these places anymore.
However, it's not like some other ones, I guess. Yeah.
Right. And I guess that I kind of pitched this idea to you. I got this idea from a student of mine, believe it or not. I kind of just threw it out there and I was like, hey guys, what do you think we should do our podcast on? And one of my students, Ion, was like, no one really knows where like Genghis Khan is buried. And I was like, really? And that's kind of what this originated.
Yeah, so I guess let's start with him.
Just start with him, right? You want to get that one?
Well, everybody knows about Genghis Khan. At the very least, you've heard the name. I guess that's a name we've kind of tossed around and doing a podcast on, right? Like
yes,
the great conquerors and stuff like that.
We should probably do a podcast just on him.
On Genghis Khan, yeah, because isn't like a certain number of people related to him anyway? Like there's like a large percentage of people just related to him.
I mean, the empire that this guy took over.
Basically, he conquered more territory than any person in history, but very little is known about what he looked like, how he died, where he's buried. And the legend is that, all right, so he died in 1227, right? That's the general consensus of when the great Khan died. According to legend is that his soldiers honored his request to keep his gravesite a secret, but they basically killed anyone who saw where he was buried and anyone who saw his funeral procession. So they ensured their silence by it, and those soldiers who did all the killing then killed themselves.
Yes.
They killed
everyone that showed up to the actual funeral, and then they
killed themselves. And there's another account that says the men concealing the grave they trampled it with 10,000 horses. Other claims they diverted a river over it, which is something you see a lot. I was watching. You ever watch that show? like history. It's with that Josh Gates guy. I forget what it's actually called,
Okay.
Expedition
Yeah, I
Unknown
don't
or
know.
something like that. And they were looking for a couple other kings, these lost graves. No, I didn't even know we were doing this podcast yet, but I was watching it, and they said that happened a couple of times. They like basically diverted rivers to cover the grave, and they murdered everyone who was around it. So that idea is not like exclusive
New.
just to Genghis
Yeah.
Khan. Divert a river, protect it from robbery, and people come and desecrating it. So his final resting place is one of the most sought after in all the prizes of archaeology. People want to find it, and they believe it's probably located somewhere in Mongolia, right? The Kenhedi province.
Yeah.
But even though they're looking for it, they just can't find it. And they're using ground penetrating radar. They use drones, and there's teams of people. They said there's probably about anywhere between like 50 to 100 teams like looking for his tomb, and they just can't find it. Like that's how popular it is. Because if you can somehow find it, I don't know how you can prove it. There's not going to be like a note that says, "Oh, hey, you found Genghis Khan's tomb," but it's going to be, obviously, it's forget about just financially, but for archaeologists, it's a big find. You're going to get rich off of it too. I would
yeah.
guess, right?
They're still looking. Yeah. The closest they got was October 6, 2004. It was like a joint Japanese-Mongolian archaeological dig, and it uncovered what they believe to be like Genghis Khan's palace in rural Mongolia. They're still not sure if that is the palace, and therefore they're not even sure if he's even buried in a palace. Not to mention that we don't really know exactly how he died either. Like you said, there's so much mystery around this guy. But if you look at like a map of how much territory he conquered, the Mongol Empire in 1200, right? It's humongous, and it's so odd that like there's so much mystery around this guy. So when you look at it, even when his death, they're saying like potentially he fell off his horse when he was hunting and then died because of the injury.
Well, he could have got injured, right? Like an arrow or
the one was with like
a
an
cut
arrow
that got infected. Like,
yeah. So no one really knows much about him, and to this day, including no one really knows where he's buried, which I was kind of surprised for someone that is so known. Let's talk about another person that kind of took over a lot of places, and you have Attila the Hun. So Attila the Hun, apparently very anticlimactic death, right? Like 453 AD. Did you hear this one? Like how he supposedly died?
No,
so
there's a couple
Attila
different
the Hun, same premise, right? I mean, this guy's known in history as like a conqueror. Apparently, he died because he passed out drunk on his wedding night. Apparently, one of many weddings. And they say that when he passed out, he started choking.
For his own wedding feast, right? I did see that.
Yeah. And apparently he started choking from a nosebleed, but people thought he was just like snoring and falling asleep drunk, so they just like let him be. But like the nosebleed actually choked him. So anyway, he was a ruler of the Huns from 434.
And no one was going to like wake him up,
No, they're like, yeah, that's
he's okay. Yeah, he would, yeah, not going to.
Well, they said he was one of the most feared enemies of the Western and Eastern Roman empires. I mean, this guy basically plundered the Balkans. He was like super, super feared. And there's a lot. We could actually do a podcast on him as well because he's kind of known as to be a pretty cruel conqueror. But when he's dying, ultimately, so he dies from this nosebleed, and his warriors honor him by.
I saw this, yeah.
So first of all, there's like a day of grief and funeral games before they actually bury him. But then, just this one, they bury him in a trio of coffins.
3 coffins. Yeah, one of iron, one of silver, and one of gold. But before that, what they do to themselves, like you said, to honor them, is they cut off their hair and they slice open their cheeks because they want to mourn him with their own blood. That's intense, dedication to someone, right?
Yeah,
so, but
so.
And then they bury him in 3 different coffins. And again, they do something that we talk about with Genghis Khan, right? They divert a river to bury his triple coffins in a riverbed, and they let the river flow over the burial site.
Which is crazy. But also the ceremony was conducted in secret, right? So like, even at the time, a lot of people don't know that.
It's recorded. They know it's happening.
And they got prisoners to dig up the actual grave. And then they were obviously killed right away to deter any like grave robberies. But to this day, no one's found his grave. It is believed it's located somewhere in Hungary.
Well, there was people in 2014 came out and said that in Budapest, right? They claimed they found his burial chamber while digging in the banks of the Danube River. They stumbled upon a chamber that contained a horse, skeleton, human skeletons, jewelry, a lot of different equipment, massive swords, and they thought maybe it was Attila the Hun's burial site, but it was proven to be a hoax.
Yeah, they said it wasn't.
People came in and put in there, which is what's going to happen. People, they get their name out in the news. I get these, archaeologist magazines. I guess very.
There are archaeologist magazines.
I know.
I had no idea until I started looking into it. I was like, oh, wow, there is.
Cleopatra.
You know what really got me about Cleopatra, which I didn't realize until I started doing this research?
You didn't know she was an Egyptian.
Well, no, we knew that. We already said that. Remember, that was in one other podcast, like a long time ago. No, this one that got me is she apparently committed suicide at the age of 39 on August 10th. And I
From
am
the bite of an
39, and
asp,
my
right?
birthday is August 10th.
Oh, there you go. So that's it.
See?
You're gonna
I
be
was like,
paranoid now, right?
what? I'm a
Well,
fan now.
you have to stay away from asps then, so they don't bite you.
Well, yeah. Plus, this was 30 BC, but it's
So
still August 10th, and she was
avoid it.
39, which is kind of
Avoid it.
crazy. All right, so like you're right. So how did she actually? Why did she kill herself, and how did she kill herself?
Well,
And
basically, the Romans are invading, right? They invade
yes,
Egypt,
yep.
and she knows what's going to happen if the Romans get her. So,
So what she said, she didn't want to be paraded
yeah.
around town or anything like that. So
And Mark
she
Anthony
decided,
commits suicide after that too, right? Or dies
yes,
after that.
yeah. This is like the real apparently Romeo and Juliet story over here. So she kills herself. She commits suicide, but to this day, no one really knows for a fact exactly how she did it. Popular belief is that she allowed an Egyptian cobra to basically bite and poison her. That's one way. Then there were some other things. There was like a toxin that was just introduced into her bloodstream. This toxin through scratching. Then there's the idea that someone apparently injected poison with a needle, like a really crude, rudimentary needle. But then again, no venomous snake was found anywhere, near her body. But she did have, they say, tiny puncture wounds on her arm that could have been caused by a needle or a snake. So no one really knows how she committed suicide. We just know that she did. And then things get a little like iffy here. Mark Anthony, also, that's like her boyfriend, I guess we could call it in today's terms.
Star-crossed lovers, yes.
Indeed. They were actually laid to rest together, right? That's the
Yeah, it was a pretty
original-
big ceremony, and it was actually Octavian that allowed them the honor of burial. It was kind of like a Roman tradition, so he allowed them to because they killed themselves. He allowed them to have an honorable burial.
So then what happens to this place where they're buried? There's a mausoleum, right? And all of a sudden it's just gone in history. No one knows what happened to it.
Well, they think what happened was probably there was a bunch of earthquakes, right, in the 4th and 8th century, a bunch of earthquakes, and basically changed the topography of Alexandria. So if they believe if it was there, they're not sure, but if it was there, it's got to be underwater now. And that's like a major thing. A lot of these early historical things, I know I've even read a story about if you follow like the 300 Spartans, I'm sure you've ever heard of that story. Like that whole area, the hot gates is actually underwater now. Like it is. It's the only way you can go to it is like from with scuba gear and stuff. I was talking about it's like a tourist trap there now because people say, "Oh, come see the hot gates." After that movie 300 came out, and they were showing people that in Greece, and historians like, no, that's not the real hot gates. The real hot gates are underwater right now because of the topography and everything, the earthquakes. So crazy.
And what's also interesting, so I did Shakespeare definitely kind of used them, immortalized them more or less in his plays and stuff. But they actually recently, I think it's 2019, they believe that they might have found her tomb. Or at least like more or less, not they haven't found her tomb, but the archaeologists believe that they have now an idea where she might potentially be buried.
It could be.
Yep, and that's fairly recent. So I think that's kind of interesting that we're
I'm sure some of these ones that we're talking about will be discovered someday.
Right? And I think we'll touch
Look, they just found out who the Zodiac was, right? So you never know.
You never know. Belief is that they're definitely buried in the same tomb, and they are supposedly closing in a little bit, like 18 miles from Alexandria at the time. They believe that they found this potential place where it might be. So again, we don't know, but you never know.
It's not like they can just go and dig automatically. Like it takes a lot.
No,
because if it is there, they don't want to destroy it. It's not as simple as just digging in the ground with a bunch of like construction equipment.
For example, look at what's his name. When they found
yes, what's his name?
King
it's a very interesting
Herod,
historical character.
Stop it, King Herod, right? Herod, that's what it was. King Herod's tomb went missing, 2,000 years ago. They say that King of Judea likely died in like 4 BC, and I think he probably died. They said it was at the time like a gruesome illness. Again, 4 BC, so we have what we have historically. But they believe it was a chronic kidney disease, an infection, and then there's a lot of history, ancient texts that are written afterwards, after Herod's death, again, King of Judea. And then, basically, there's supposed to be a lavish burial site, and then it's gone. They find it in 2007. The scholars finally find his tomb. So this, like you said before, these things could be found for, as we speak, they're looking for it. But what you brought up as well is that you can't just kind of go and start digging. They found the place where they believed Herod's tomb was 35 years before they actually found it. Like they found it and they started excavating, and it took them 35 years, talking from
Yeah,
1970s
it
until
takes time.
2007 to actually get to what they wanted to get to. Like that's a long
It's
time,
not an over. Yeah, it's not an overnight thing.
right? Just crazy. They found it in like a man-made hill. Apparently, it was like a Hebrew
Oh
University
yeah,
professor
yes,
that
yes.
started it. In
Yeah,
1972, they were like, okay, this is like and this again, this is today. They'll scan it with computers and lasers, but back then they're
yeah.
like, this is a man-made hill. It was about 8 miles south of Jerusalem, and they started just excavating this hill in 72, which is crazy. No bones were found. They believe that highly likely they found his tomb, but highly likely Jewish rebels, sometime during like 60 A.D., destroyed that particular tomb. But anyway,
Well,
that
another
just shows
one.
that
Well,
you
another
can.
place. Yeah, it shows it's hard to do it, but they can find these. But another one that like used to be well known, wasn't on purpose, wasn't hidden, but now was kind of lost to history. Was Alexander the Great, right?
Yep.
I think that's a kind of
Also,
interesting story too. So everyone knows the story of Alexander the Great. Okay, died in Babylon, 323 BC. Macedonian, right?
yes, indeed. Like our really good
Okay,
friend.
no, can't diss the Macedonians, although
Nope.
that's a whole
Well,
other
should we say
issue.
North Macedonia?
North Macedonia, obviously, it's a whole big issue, but we'll
Yeah,
have a podcast on that eventually.
we should. We should.
Um, but basically, he conquers from Greece all the way to India, right? So he's the warrior king. He dies. He was placed in a golden sarcophagus, right? And coffin, eventually taken to a tomb in Alexandria. And it was in this mausoleum for years. And became basically like an ancient tourist attraction, right? Like Caesar's known to have gone there, Julius Caesar, Augustus. They pay their respects. Caligula, which we've talked about this a couple times, really should do a podcast on Caligula.
Yeah,
But
intense dude.
there's rumors that he basically looted Alexander's armor breastplate during a visit in the first century.
Yep.
And then eventually the Roman Emperor Servius has a tomb sealed off around 199 because people keep on going in there stealing stuff.
Yep.
And then basically that's the last time we hear anything about Alexander the Great's tomb. It goes kind of like cold from there. And there's been hundreds of these expeditions to try to like pick up where it is now. They believe it's probably somewhere in Alexandria, but others argue that it was probably moved at some point to even Greece, Venice, or some other place, even in Egypt. They're saying it was moved at some point. They keep it away from looters. So it could
Yep.
be one of those things that some people might know where it is, and it might be documented somewhere to state where it is, but it's definitely hidden from history. But this was one that like he wasn't. Everyone wasn't killed after he died. It wasn't hidden underneath a riverbed. It would say this is where he's buried. Come see Alexander the Great's tomb, and people went. It just over time disappeared.
Which is crazy because, like you mentioned, it was like the first like tourist attraction. Like think of Lenin's mausoleum.
Oh, people wanted to go. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like
Lenin's
Lenin's
mausoleum.
tomb,
He's still there.
situated. Yeah,
He's going to
exactly.
get up one day and walk out.
But it's crazy because I mean he embalmed so many times. You could Google pictures of this, but Lenin's tomb is situated in a red square in the center of Moscow, and it's obviously the resting place of Lenin. But his body has been preserved and on public display since his death in 1924, which is crazy. Like you could just go check it out. Um, I think it was kind of crazy. And they say that like millions of people have visited Lenin's tomb, but I guess this was kind of what you had going over here with
Yeah, but Alexander the Great.
Alexander Great.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's see what else we got here. We did Khan, we did Alexander Great. Mozart.
Yeah, this is a more modern one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting
right.
story.
Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So amazing composer. Everyone's heard the name Mozart. He dies from some mysterious illness, late 1700s. They placed him in a wooden coffin, and they actually put him in an unmarked grave in Vienna. And he lays in this unmarked grave until like 19th century. So he lays there for, I would say probably 20 years or so. At the time, the way this used to work is after like 20 years or so, an unmarked grave would be dug up and the body would be kind of like dispersed with and crushed or something, and it would make room for new burials.
It's
So
on
they like
top of each
reuse the
other.
same
Yeah.
burial site. Um, so basically, what happened here is highly likely that's what happened to him. What I don't understand is why did they put him in an unmarked common grave? Again, I would need to look into that a little bit more, but apparently that's what I did. And then his body's kind of exhumed and supposedly thrown out. However, apparently the guy that was in charge of that cemetery was thinking ahead, and he put a piece of um, like a metal or something that he like knocked into his skull, into Mozart's skull, so that he could identify it later on. And apparently, this gravedigger guy claimed that he recovered his skull in 1801 because he was able to find the skull with this metal ding in it.
But isn't it
Um,
disputed if it actually is his skull? Like
yes,
they
yep,
can't prove anything.
yep. They can't prove it. It does exist. It is at Mozart's like International Museum Foundation or something, but no DNA analysis thus far have been
Well,
able
I
to
did find
prove
about
that.
it what you were saying, like why he was buried in this unmarked grave or common grave.
Right.
Basically, his friend basically made all the arrangements for him to be buried there, and it wasn't a communal grave or a pauper's grave by any stretch, but it was just a normal ordinary grave location, kind of like the ones that they use today.
Yep.
And because it was public law, local law, they said it could be dug up and reused after 10 years. And that's basically pretty much what happened, like you said. And then they just don't know where his remains are. Someone probably came, dug him up, and has them.
Sir Francis Drake. And it's funny because everyone knows Sir Francis Drake, but I know Drake primarily from like playing, Uncharted for PlayStation.
Isn't Drake he's a rapper, right? He's the
Well,
one from the
yeah,
Degrassi.
he is from Degrassi back in the day. You just age
Oh,
yourself, Degrassi.
Sir Francis Drake. Okay, different Drake.
Yeah, Sir Francis Drake. Come on, Tom,
That's
get it
my
together. Get it
that's
together.
my dad jokes right there.
He was Queen Elizabeth's the first favorite privateer.
Pirate,
Um,
right?
yeah, he was a pirate basically, and he met his end in Panama in 1596. He basically started like harassing Spanish holdings in the New World, and kind of as he's circumnavigating the globe, he's kind of messing with the Spanish. He's defeated like numerous times. He in 1595 he fails to conquer Las Palmas. Then he has a disastrous campaign against Spanish America. Finally, the Spanish gunners shoot a cannonball through his cabin in his flagship. He apparently survives this. Then he tries to attack in the rich port of Panama, which is where he's defeated again. And it was shortly thereafter that he actually dies on January 28th, 1596. He was about 56 years old. And he dies of dysentery. So basically, common disease at a time, where you die from some really bloody diarrhea. Anyway, graphic, I guess, right? I mean, it just makes me think of what's that game? Oregon Trail. But so what happens after his death, right? He's dressed in his armor, very heavy armor. He is sealed inside a lead coffin, and he's given a traditional burial at sea.
Yeah, which means you're not going to find it. So
Yeah, but they're still looking for it because
they're still looking for it. Yeah,
because it's supposedly like when they dropped him off, they were about 14 miles off the coast of Portobello. Like it was pretty much written down where they dropped him. So they've been lost in the Caribbean, obviously, but it hasn't stopped. I mean, divers, archaeologists, treasure hunters, they're literally because it's so heavy that when it fell, they're like, well, maybe we could find it. But the depths
yeah. I know
of
they
the
found
ocean, I
two of
mean,
his scuttled ships, and they were like looking for
that's what it was in 2011, right?
yeah, coffin around there. But I mean, the odds of finding it—that's literally like a needle in a haystack type of
Yeah.
thing. But they're
But
looking
they did
for it
find
in
his two
frontiers.
ships. That's cool.
Yeah.
2011, they found his two ships, which is kind of
Well,
cool.
scuttled ships are a little bigger than a coffin.
Well,
6 foot
yeah, but I
coffin.
mean, it could be close, right? Needless to say, they have not found it, so we do not know where Sir Francis Drake is buried. Um, Thomas Paine. I was kind of a little surprised to find Thomas Paine on here.
Yeah, this was one you thought would be somewhere, like
Like
you
somewhere
never
in
really think
the
about,
United States.
not that
Yeah.
I'm spending time thinking about Thomas Paine. No offense, but like you figure it would definitely be buried somewhere. Oh, maybe he's got to be buried somewhere. Like American Revolution, all that good stuff. But
Well, so we know. So
heading
just
up to
for
it anyway.
a little recap for those of you guys that might have forgotten, Thomas Paine is known as the man that wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense, and eventually the American Crisis, which was read by George Washington prior to the attack of Trenton. Um, Basically, what you're looking at is this is the guy that is kind of credited with inspiring common Americans to rally behind the cause for independence. He was British, though, interesting enough. Um, so anyway, considered a hero, but then like things kind of go in the wrong direction for him afterwards. The Age of Reason. He writes this book. Basically, he like tries to attack the church in this
He's
book.
attacking church, which doesn't go very well, obviously, in the
Yeah,
1800s.
And apparently, when he dies in 1809, not a lot of people actually go to see him. See his funeral.
Yeah,
So
he wasn't really well supported. He wasn't really well
no,
liked at that point in
in the United
the United
States, yeah.
States. Yeah,
So
or anywhere
basically,
really.
right in 1809, one of his friends exhumes Payne's corpse
Yeah,
and ships
William
it.
Cobbett.
Cobbett, right? Yeah, he ships it over to England, and that's where he has this belief that they're going to see him as a hero, even though this is the guy that left England
Yeah,
and then complained
well, he
about England and kind of
next
caused
to a memorial to be
yeah,
made and all this other stuff, and
right,
basically no one cares. He can't get any interest in it. So basically, the remains just sit in Cobbett's attic
yeah.
for years, which I don't know why you don't bring it somewhere else. I don't know why you want your friends' remains in your attic. That's
Tom, I'm not
just
going to have
like,
your remains in my
no, I
attic.
was going to say that too. That's not going to happen. All right, no offense,
Nope,
but
nope.
this is not going to
Um,
happen.
at least a basement. Give me the basement. I'm just kidding. But still, so what happens is, did you see how it ends? So now accounts believe that literally it was just thrown in the garbage later on
It's
after
threw
this.
out, or they recycled his bones into buttons. Like, imagine that. They're saying like this, the indignities that this guy got. Like, when you read him in the history book, it's Thomas Paine, right? Big time hero, common sense. But it's his life ended, and then his reputation just was like nothing after that. It was a really interesting story.
Yeah, his body is was just but actually, did you see this too? Historians also believe that because a lot of different collectors have claimed over the years
Yeah,
to
parts of
have
his.
possess parts of him.
Yeah,
So the belief is
like
that
his
maybe this
hand,
guy
his
just
jaw, his
exactly,
skull.
and the belief is that his friend eventually was like, I don't know what to do with this, so he just started handing out parts of Thomas
Yeah,
Paine.
well, that's actually a common thing to do with like saints, right?
It's just crazy. I thought
But
that was a
like,
little intense.
yeah, I know. Well, it's not going to fly today. You're not going to want like
No.
people's body parts to like remember them by. But I guess back in the 1800s, that's a that's a nice souvenir.
Well, there's also another one that's kind of disputed, even though it's not disputed, but it potentially is disputed, and that is Leonardo da Vinci. I don't know if you saw this.
I saw some Da Vinci
So they
stuff.
had to move him. So after painting Mona Lisa and The Last Supper, Da Vinci winds up moving to France to work for King Francis the First. Um, so after he dies, the French bury him in a chapel, and what happens is the French Revolution kind of comes into play,
Yeah, and then you
and
got to get
a
it
group
out. They know they have to move the
exactly.
tomb.
So a group of revolutionaries basically wipe out this chapel. So fans of the Renaissance kind of remove his remains and transport him to a smaller chapel. But the question, and that's kind of where he is today. But the question remains is no one's really sure if they transplanted the right remains because he was not the only body in that chapel, and they're not sure if because of the again French Revolution, the commotion, they're not sure to this day if it's really him that was transplanted. And
But
the
they
problem is
want
that
to test some of the DNA, right? Against some of
yeah,
his
and
relatives
there's a
that are
problem
alive
with the
today. His
DNA though.
descendants.
Yeah, he had
He
no
didn't have any
children.
kids. He never, so
Yep,
it's his half brother. They were compared to his half brother.
yep. And they said because
I
of
mean, they
that,
could do
it's
that.
still yeah. They said they're going to try to compare to modern DNA with a lock of hair that might have come from Da Vinci. So we know where he's buried, but historians are doubtful enough where they're willing to spend millions of dollars to figure out if that's really him, which I thought was kind of crazy. Um, what
Iconic.
else? Yeah, well, let's talk about. Do you have any other ones that we don't? Because you want to? I have a few that were lost and then they were found.
Well, they have ones that yeah, there were ones that they lost. They found later on, obviously. Well, one that's I know we've talked about a bit, but that they think we're probably never going to know exactly unless the KGB decides to say stuff as Hitler,
Oh yeah, Hitler. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they like the KGB initially hid all the evidence of the leader's burial. They wanted to make sure that it was never found, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
become like a fascist meeting site. That one we kind of talked up. We kind of talked
We
about
did kind of
before
talk
when
about that, but at the
what
same
happened with Hitler
time,
here.
when I started looking into this time around, there were some things that came up that I just don't remember reading last time we did this because apparently, when they found the leader, the remains of him and Eva Brown, which were right next to the bunker, so apparently they moved these and hide them in German forests. The Soviets do this, and then they dig him up, transport him over, and it says the KGB takes it over in 1970. And apparently they dig up the Fuhrer's body, and then according to some KGB documents, they were burnt on a bonfire outside of this town, right? But I don't think any of this is really Like I wouldn't. I don't know how credible
Yeah,
the
I don't
source
know.
is.
And you never know. Because remember, we talked about in the podcast too. Like they had that skull. They always said it was
Yeah.
Hitler's, and they
Yep.
test it in like what 2004 or whatever, 2008,
Yeah.
and it turns out to be a woman's skull. So they're like, oh well, I guess that's not
So
wasn't
you
Hitler.
never
So
know.
you, it's just one of those things of what really happened with him.
Nuts.
There is no formal burial site of Adolf Hitler.
Right. And I mean, and this is
There
crazy.
would
Like,
be.
so, right. But some of these things do get found. That's definitely something we need to talk about. I mean, recently you have the remains of Don Quixote author Miguel Cervantes, right? It was lost for centuries. It was misplaced somewhere in like the Covenant, um, in Madrid, and they found him. It's like, oh look, we found him. That's exciting. After being like lost for hundreds of years, which is kind of crazy. Richard III of England. That was a
Richard, yeah, I saw this one.
biggie
Yeah,
find.
that's a big one.
Um, yeah, so he's killed during the Battle of Bosworth Field, 1485. He does actually receive a burial site, right? A Greyfriars Ferry church, and the ferry was dissolved in 1538 and demolished not long afterwards. But no one really bothered to make sure that Richard's body was accounted for. So by 1600s, it was basically lost. They're like, yeah, we destroyed this ferry, and wait, wasn't it Richard III? Like, wasn't he buried there? So 2012. So this is from 1500 to 2012. There was an excavation of a bank parking lot, and archaeologists uncovered like the ferry's original foundation. They're like, oh wait, let's stop. So from there, they were able to determine like the location of the actual choir area of the ferry where Richard's remains were rumored to be, based on historical writings, and it actually turned out to be correct because they found a skeleton that bared the same curved spine, death injuries as the king, and by February 2013, DNA testing had proved that it was indeed the long lost body of King Richard III. That's kind of crazy. Imagine that. We're just going to do some parking lot stuff here. Boom.
Yeah, I mean that's what they found. They recently found the Romanovs too.
Yeah,
Well,
so that's a
recently,
cool story if you look at the Romanovs.
yeah, the
Because,
last Tsars of Russia.
yep,
They were killed. And they was again like they were intended. They wanted the bodies to be hid. They were going to hide them in iron mines. They had trucks
yep.
carrying them. So they wanted to basically got stuck in the mud. So they had to hurry and dispose of the corpses. So they decided to burn them right there. And they threw acid on the remains and burned them beneath some logs. And then two of the children were buried in a different grave because the guy who was doing it basically it would be hard to identify the family if they were separated. And he
Yep.
was pretty much right. And his plan worked until the 70s where they actually
Which is
discovered three
crazy how this
skulls.
happens. Because someone
Yeah.
finds it and they're like, oh no, the communists are going to kill
Well,
me. I'm just
yeah,
going
they
to talk
got
about it.
worried. They're like, well, we found this, but he was like, I'm not gonna. He tried that forensic test done, but ended up putting the skulls back where he found them because he believed he was putting his life in danger. People were
Yeah,
like,
he
you
thought the
better not,
communists were going to kill him. This is
you better
79.
not. Yeah, he's like, you better not be advertising that you found the Romanovs. He's like, oh man, okay, what are you talking about? Who are the
Yeah.
Romanovs, right? So it wasn't until 1990 then that he wrote to Boris Yeltsin to inform of the location of the bodies, which led to excavation. And then separate graves containing the two Romanov children wasn't found until 2007. So, like you said, it takes a long time for this to happen. And then
Nuts.
eventually, the family and the four housemaids who were also executed were all reunited in a crypt at Peter and Paul Cathedral in St. Petersburg. I remember hearing about this and seeing it on TV. It was like a big deal. And you can go.
We should
have
really.
that.
Did we do a podcast on like the Romanov and
We
the.
did a World War one, didn't we?
Yeah.
Some stuff in World War One.
We should, it's been too many now. I'm like forgetting what we did. I got to look
Yes,
back.
go check the archives.
Indeed. Yeah, Romanovs was kind of an interesting story. I just think it's crazy that as a geologist like discovers these three skulls with bullet holes,
Yeah,
right?
but he's like freaked out. He's
Yeah,
like, oh,
there's
well,
79. He's like, let's put these back.
you don't. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I did not find anything.
Welcome to Soviet Russia. Nuts. Anyway, I mean, I think this is pretty much it. I mean, if you guys
There's other
go on
ones
the
out there,
internet,
obviously, but these are
there's so
some of
many.
like
Yeah.
the main ones that we were able to locate and just the cover quickly here.
Yeah, and if you guys are more interested in this, you could totally just keep on looking. There's a lot tombs of historical figures that have been lost. I mean, probably some of the more known one here would be like Cleopatra and Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan. I
These
mean,
are all names people heard. There's
yeah,
other ones too. There's other different kings and stuff like that might
there's a
not
lot of
be.
kings actually that I saw. Yeah,
Yeah, King Harold, right? Actually, that one they found. Yeah, but people are looking
Nefertiti. They
for him.
think
People are looking
Nefertiti
for him.
might potentially be buried somewhere near King
Somewhere
Tut
by
because she was,
by Tut, right? Yeah, I
yeah,
saw
she
that.
was his
That was popping
mother-in-law.
up a lot.
So they were like,
So
maybe. But anyway, for all of you guys that are out there listening, we really appreciate all your support. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure you subscribe wherever you are indeed listening to this podcast. And if you ever need us, you could find us at historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. On social media, we're around. We really do enjoy the emails. They are fun and they're very, really nice and kind so far. So we enjoy them,
Yeah,
as
please
well
keep
as
that happening.
as well as your comments on social media. So and reviews. If you're out there and you're actually enjoying this, please feel free to leave a review. That always helps out. So thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you guys next week. Enjoy.
Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.